Hey guys, when I say breaker, which breaker do you think of first? Do you think of this breaker first? Or do you think of this breaker first? Well, I'm pretty sure most of you guys thought of this breaker first, right? And I wouldn't be very surprised because if we look at the statistics of which breaker people are playing, in Korea, 70% about of players are playing the Sura breaker. Meanwhile, only about 30-ish percent of players are playing the Brawl King breaker. And I'd say that that stat is pretty true here in the NAEU servers as well. I was looking at Party Finder earlier on NA East, and I was basically going down and counting every single breaker and counting which engraving they had. I counted around 9 Brawl King breakers compared to 22 Sura breakers. That number is roughly around 30%. So I'm very interested in this because I don't think there's ever been a situation where both classes that, Smilegate comes out with, the new classes, both of them are just as OP as one another, but there's been such a big focus and emphasis on one class, and one class beats out the other class in popularity by a ton. I've never seen this. If we think back to the most recent classes, right? Soul Eater. Both classes I'd say are about the same power level, and I'd see probably around equal representation from both. Maybe slightly more towards Knight's Edge. I don't know. Maybe it's just the group that I play with. I think they're pretty 50-50. And then, you think about back to Drizzle Aeromancer versus Wind Fury Aeromancer. That was pretty close to 50-50 in my opinion. And also, if we go back to Slayer, right? Originally, Punisher Slayer was very, very strong, and a lot of people were playing Punisher. But I'd say there was also a good number of people playing Predator as well. But with Brawl King and Sura Breaker, it is actually insane that the number differential is so crazy. And you know what actually inspired me to make this video? I have been to a handful of parties where people just flat out assume that a breaker is Sura without, basically what they do is I'll talk about like, hey, shouldn't we put this synergy over there, right? It's like, well, Sura Breaker doesn't need, or Breaker doesn't need crits in. I'm like, but that guy's a Brawl King breaker. He's like, oh, I didn't notice that. I didn't know that. It's actually pretty insane. It hasn't just happened like once or twice. It's happened a handful of times to me where in different scenarios, I go into a party and people just immediately assume that a breaker is a Sura breaker when in fact they're not, and they're playing a Brawl King breaker. Heck, I've even done it. When I went into an Econ one time, there was another breaker in the other party, and I'm like, wait, why is that guy not shadowboxing? Is he dumb? Does he not know how to play the class? And I literally didn't even find out that he was a Brawl King breaker until the end of Gate 2 when I actually decided to check what engravings and what stats and build he was doing. Because I was like, damn, this guy's kind of pumping. Is he like way more a gear than I am? But it's like, no, he was a Brawl King breaker, and he, as a result, was playing a different playstyle. It's like, wow. That is actually crazy that even I had these biases going into this. So I was really wondering, like, what about Breaker is it that one, it's, most people are playing Sura, but two, I think to an even more crazy extent is that most people just assume people are playing Sura, even though, yes, 70-30 is quite a big difference, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not 90-10, right? I think like if it's like 90-10, then we can probably assume like, somebody coming in is probably a Sura breaker. Like, for example, I don't know, artillerist. Nobody plays firepower, so it's like, of course, when you see an artillerist, you're going to assume they're a barrage artillerist, right? But that's not the case with Breaker. It's not like a 90-10 situation. It's a 70-30 situation. And I just think it's insane how this has happened in Lost Ark. And I think there are, personally, a couple factors to it. And I think to explain those factors, let's hop into the game. So I'm here on my NAE's character, on my Brawl King Breaker, and I want to use this as an opportunity to demonstrate to you the first reason why I think that the Brawl King Breaker isn't quite as popular as it should be. The first reason is because of its general playstyle. I think that the Brawl King Breaker has a lot of interesting quirks to it, kind of similar to that of like a striker. in that it's very reliant on hitting its skills to get meter. You might say that this is the case with any meter generating class, but I'd say it's actually more tough on the Brawl King Breaker for a couple reasons. So the first reason is because it has a lot of holding skills. So a lot of these skills kind of hinge on you hitting basically like every single hit of your skills to be able to get your meter in smooth rotation. So you want to hit every single skill on this Yon Gale Storm Strike move. If you don't have the highest spec, if you don't have the highest wealth runes, you need to hit every single hit of this skill right here, 100 fists, in order to be able to get your meter. You have to hit, basically every single one of your skills to get a full bar in one rotation, which can be quite tough for Breaker because you are a very, very, very much a melee class in that very literal sense, because you are out here using your fists. So you don't have the reach of like a Reaper Scythe, for example, with Soul Eater. You don't have the reach and like kind of hitboxes of like a Glaive, for example. Heck, even the Reaper, I'd say, for its skills, there are a lot of hitboxes that really are huge. And also, part of it, it kind of like pushes your character away from a boss or creates like an AoE or something like that, or moves you really close to the boss, right? There's a lot of mobility options there, which the Breaker just doesn't have as much of on its main skills. So it really gets a little bit clunky when it comes to generating meter. And even if the boss moves kind of like slightly away, it can kind of mess up your whole rotation. And on top of this, one of your main meter generating skills right here, Adamantine Assault, doesn't actually even have any sort of paralysis immunity. You don't have paralysis immunity on this skill or this skill, which makes it, again, a little bit tough to gain that meter. You could say the same for, Sura Breaker. They use a lot of similar abilities, but for one, they don't have to hit the boss to gain their meter. And two, they have their X skill, right? So they can use that for not only paralysis immunity, but also knock-up immunity. And I think this is one of the main reasons why Breaker for the Brawl King Breaker is quite a bit less popular than Sura Breaker. It's just a little bit of a more clunky class than Sura because of the way it works. But at the end of the day, in terms of damage, they're both very similar, right? I'd say, of course, Sura Breaker has a little bit of a higher ceiling, but on average rate performances, I think they both perform about the same. Now, that's the first reason, how clunky it is to play, and also like the reach and the range, right? But I think the main reason why there's such a big discrepancy between the two breakers is just because I think one breaker just got a little bit more love from Smilegate than the other. I'd say that Brawl King Breaker is a very similar class to a lot of other classes in the game. For example, people compare it oftentimes to like a non-positional Surge, right? Or they compare it to like better Striker, for example. But I'd say like the Asura Breaker, even though it's kind of similar to GT, it really isn't that similar at all when you break it down. And also, the animations for that class are just a lot flashier. When you think about it, right? Let's take a look at this class right here. Are there any skills that you say have quite a, really fancy animation? This one's just, a jump. You kind of have this on your Brawl King, on your Asura as well. Same with that, right? These three skills you have on your Asura Breaker. But this skill right here, you literally can't even see it, right? There's no real animations for it. And this one right here, it's like, okay, very, very tiny animations. Same with this one, right? It's pretty tiny, kind of slow, kind of clunky. The only time you're really going to get a good animation is for this one right here, your Eye of the Storm, which Sura Breaker also runs. And then the other one is going to be your Z skill. Oh, wait, I don't have the engraving equipped right now. This one right here, your Z skill, right? When you hold this down, boom. You get a situation where you only have two skills that really look kind of like impressive. And I think that is a big drawback for this class for many people, right? Just the aesthetics and such. And meanwhile, on Sura Breaker, you literally have one of kind of the most iconic skill and attack animations here, right? kind of like a reference to JoJo, of course, for one, but also it's just like it makes your entire screen and your character just feel completely badass when you're doing this. Now, maybe this is a, opinion of mine and not many other people share it, but I think that this overall kind of like makes the entire class worth playing over Brawl King completely, just for its unique playstyle and its aesthetics as well. But on top of this attack, you also, of course, have Eye of the Storm again, which looks badass, right? Maybe a little bit less badass than Sura, but you also have this skill right here, which is kind of flashy. You have this skill right here, which is pretty flashy. And I would argue, even this skill is pretty flashy, right? It feels like there's a good weight behind your attack and makes the class overall feel better to play. I think that in terms of class design, Brawl King Breaker was just a little bit more, I don't know, run of the mill, very much safe, and not something that they really kind of stepped out of their normal comfort zone to make. Whereas Sura was a class that got a little bit more love, got a little bit more to its kit as well, and also was a little bit more unique of a class compared to Brawl King Breaker. And all these reasons combined really made it so that Sura is just quite a bit more popular compared to Brawl King, even though on performance, both classes are just very OP and also pretty much perform very similarly to each other during an actual raid scenario. So yeah, that's about it. This video wasn't really meant to be like informative or anything. I just wanted to have an open discussion because I did think it was super interesting how these two classes were just so different in terms of like population, even just like in the minds of people, right? All people always just thought about Sura Breaker when they thought about Breaker. Let me know down in the comment section below, what do you think? Of course, I'm not saying that Brawl King Breaker doesn't exist, right? There's plenty of them out there. But I think that there definitely is a conversation to be had around the popularity of Sura compared to Brawl King Breaker. So let me know down in the comment section below what you think. Why do you think Brawl King is so much less popular than Sura? Do you play Brawl King? Do you feel the same way? And yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please remember to hit the like button, hit the sub button, ring the bell for notifications, and also I stream every single night on twitch.tv/MeSelectShrew. So hopefully I see you guys there. But if not, hopefully I'll see y'all on the next video. All right, guys, peace out.